I'm Anna, and I originally was born in Australia and then spent most of my life growing up in New Zealand. And then recently moved to Singapore about 7 months ago. But I'm currently in Australia during this pandemic. So here I am. My interest has always really been in student development and how we provide young people with the opportunities to learn and grow. And I guess really fulfill what they're passionate about and filling that potential that I know that everyone has. And I guess it's always been something that I only really discovered an interest in when I was at university, and I was doing a lot of extracurricular activities and leadership groups and development courses and things like that. And I just kind of always knew that just was something I was super passionate about throughout university. So when I started working at Microsoft, I started in the marketing team. And I always sort of thought in the last few years of university that I would end up in marketing. But I sort of found myself working at Microsoft doing marketing, but I never really thought that tech was a place that I saw myself in. And really it kind of comes down to that cliche, well, I don't really know many females who work in the tech industry, and it was such a foreign thing to me. And this wasn't really even that long ago. So within 6 months of interning there, I kind of was like, wow, this is really awesome. There's all these things that I just didn't know existed or knew about. And, I had some really great leaders that were mentors to me at a really early start in my career, who kind of gave me those opportunities and nurtured me kind of to sort of where I am today, right? And now I can't really imagine working in a sector that isn't the tech industry. So that's kind of how I ended up there. But when an opportunity arose to work within education, I was like, wow, this is perfect. I'm really big on youth development and students. And, if I can work in the education team at Microsoft, that's kind of the best of both worlds. And yeah, a couple of roles later, I worked in New Zealand looking at primarily schools. How do we improve the schooling sector around the technology that's available and the infrastructure, and working with our partner ecosystem to do that. And then the role I'm in now, really, I never expected I could get paid to do a job like this, if I'm honest. So to be able to work across, how do we skill and prepare the next generation for the world to come and the workforce, really is very philanthropic in many ways, but I get to do that from a corporate perspective. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of lucky being able to do something I'm personally passionate about, but in a professional manner. And then I guess from a more career-orientated way, I think you want to know a little bit about my role currently now.
Yeah.
So my role now is really random title, which you notice in technology, we just give people really strange titles that don't really mean too much in the real world. But effectively, as a future-ready skills lead, my region really covers all of Asia, so everything from Greater China to India to Australia, and everything in between. And what I'm looking at is, how do we drive cloud skilling in particular, given we're a massive cloud company. And we, strongly believe that cloud is really going to be the disruptor to a lot of things in society, as we've already seen. So how do we drive cloud skills into the education system so that the students coming out of the education sector have the talent and the skills needed to address the skills shortage that we face as an industry, but it just more broadly as a society. So I do that through working on a school level around incorporating cloud curriculum that we have available into the education systems across not only schools but higher education, and then also working on a government level as well around how do we drive some of this curriculum nationally. And I guess the other piece to all of that beyond just cloud skilling is how do we drive engagement from students around STEM and computer science, and getting them really excited about that from a really early age, because as we know, it's a lot harder to introduce that when we get older as opposed to introducing it at a younger age. So I hope that sort of explains a little bit about my role.
Yes,
Happy to elaborate further.
that explains a lot, but when I was researching about future skills and everything, I was looking a lot of studies and reading, and
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure what future skills will be in 2030, for example. So I would
Mm-hmm.
like to ask you what future skills means for you in this moment, particular moment, because you are leader for future skills in Microsoft, right? So that's really
Mm-hmm.
great position, and I think that you're the right person who can really answer to me which future skills will be in 2030. What can we consider
Mm-hmm.
about future skills?
Gosh, there's so many ways to kind of answer that question.
Yeah,
I
hard
think,
question,
I
I
think,
know.
yeah. I mean, no one can really predict the future, and I mean, what that's 10 years from now. And I think if you look at the research that's already been done by LinkedIn, by
Mhm.
Accenture, by the World Economic Forum, a lot of them will tell you that I guess the future skills from a technology point of view is really going to be around artificial intelligence and cloud compute. So that's kind of my view of, okay, well, if we know that this is going to be a massive disruptor to society, and we also know that there's a massive shortage in the talent that's coming out of education at the moment to meet that skills gap. I would say if I was a student, I'd be looking at, okay, well, how do I prepare myself or position myself to learn those skills to be able to apply for the jobs that I know are probably going to exist in the next 10 years. But I guess when I think about future skills, I also think about, I mean, you could call them soft skills, you could call them human skills, which I think will continue to be even more relevant with the disruption of technology. So I would really think about it as, how do we develop empathy? How do we develop collaboration? Those interpersonal skills and that emotional intelligence that I think everybody needs, especially as technology disrupts so many jobs that we've seen, even if you look back in the past 100 years, right? And with AI becoming even more prevalent, I think the value add that we have as humans is to really look at that and go, are we using this technology ethically? Are we, you know, because at the end of the day, technology is not going to be as human as you and I, right? So there's always
Right.
going to be a need for us to have that layer of humanity to technology. And also that layer of, well, understanding how people think and feel is really going to impact how we develop solutions that will actually meet the needs of people around the world. So I think when you say future skills, yes, from a technology standpoint, we can talk about AI, but if I think about the things that will stand the test of time, no matter what new skills and trends come, it's really going to come down to those human skills, I guess, those soft skills that I think will continue to prevail.
You think as compassion, empathy, communication,
Mm-hmm.
attention to details, but I was wondering, don't we have now our empathy and compassion? Isn't that considered, or that is something that we should develop on workplace? Like, is it possible that we
Mm-hmm.
now don't have so many compassion on the workplace, or because maybe of that competition that we are forced to, to compare to each other, to have some norms? Is the future be going to look better than it looks now, or like how?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand. It's kind of interesting because you would almost assume that a lot of these things just exist and that people know them, but a lot of these capabilities are learned, right? They're learned from a young age when you are forced to share things with other kids, when you're asked to create something with other kids in your classroom, or even at university where you're having to work on a project together, and you're having to deal with conflict. You might not get along with somebody else, or you might have people in the team who have different personalities and different goals, and how do
Different
you
culture?
resolve all of these things? So I think, yes, to some extent, education trains you for that, but do I think it does completely? I would say no, right? And let's take the example of um, exams or tests that students take at the end of the year. When we do these exams and tests, we're doing them by ourselves with no access to internet often,
Right.
with the inability to talk to anybody else. But in the real world, you have to work with other people. You have access to the internet to solve these problems. So I think there's a level of the education system has to kind of adapt to model what we actually see in real life beyond education. But I also think sometimes we assume that empathy is, people just know how to do that and people just have emotional intelligence. But I'm sure as well, you might have come across people in the workplace and it just doesn't quite click for them, right? They haven't had exposure to people of different ethnic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds. So the more exposure you have to different people who challenge the way that you think, I think you'll develop that empathy. But I wouldn't say that the existing workplace or education more broadly currently does that. So I think organizations or businesses have to be very conscious around how they, foster that environment for people to have that exposure and for people to learn from those experiences. And the same for education. So I hope that
Whoa,
kind of
you
answers
answered
that
me.
question.
I was the whole weekend so worried. Like, why do I need to learn compassion? Why do I need to learn empathy? Why do I need to learn how to be good, human being? Like, I thought that it's considered, but now when you explain me, I really now can understand what future skill will be, what is considered under that term compassion. And also because, and I was also watching series Black Mirror. I don't know, have you watched it?
Oh yeah, I love that show.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's good.
I was also worried, is future going to be like this, like in the Black Mirror, that's like that technology with our humanity, or now from your perspective, I cannot wait for this future that you were talking about a few minutes ago, So what do you think that will happen? Is Black...
when I watch Black Mirror, I think when you watch it, it's kind of freaky because you think, actually, hypothetically, some of these things could be real life, right? They could become true. And I think the great thing about a show like Black Mirror is that it really makes you think a lot about the moral and ethical aspects that you need to be thinking about when you're developing technology, and how that can be used for good and for bad, right? And that comes back to having that human view of things that will really matter. So do I think some of these things will happen in the future? I think it is possible. But I think if we continue to nurture that empathy and compassion and that humanity into the way that we develop technology and be very responsible about the way that we use it, I would hope that some of those things don't become true, but we see the benefits instead of the harm that it could cause.
Am I going to be wrong? But could you please describe me your day in Microsoft? Like, what are you doing? How it's looking, your trainings? I and our followers would like to get to know much about your job, because it's not so, you don't have opportunity every day to meet leader for future skills in Microsoft. Like, it's pretty much okay. We can all understand that you're a leader, but like, what is under that term? Would you please explain us, describe your work day? How does it look? For me, it's something really new, and I'm really interested to know more.
I'll be really honest and say it's a very new role for the company, and no one's kind of done this job before me. So in many ways, I'm having to kind of understand what the role is myself and how I want to shape the role. And I guess when we talk about it being a future ready skills leader role, it's really, okay, well, I've come into this role, and how do I lead the narrative and the point of view for Microsoft around future ready skills into the Asia region, specifically around technical skilling. So, in terms of the leadership piece, what does it look like in a day? It's, every day is a bit different for me, but what does a typical day look like? But generally, what I would normally do in this role is I work with, we call it a V team, or, a virtual team across all the different countries in Asia. We have education teams there, and my job is really working with them to go, how do we take the global strategy and the global messaging and land that specifically for Asia, because as we know, Asia itself as a market can be very different to other markets. And so sometimes what we do on a global level doesn't always, I guess, make sense or translate into the Asian market. So the leadership piece is going, well, how do I provide that direction, provide that clarity, and generate that energy amongst the team within Asia to really get behind future-ready skills, and to also provide them that clarity around, well, what do I actually have to do in my job to land these things with our customers, which is really education institutions. So there's a level of that around landing the strategy, and my point of view is to go, okay, well, yes, there's a global strategy, but I get to, in some ways, influence or lead the strategy for Asia. And the only way I can really do that is working really closely with the local teams, because they've got the local understanding of the market and the nuances that I might not have. And so I take their feedback and what we're hearing from customers as well, and feeding that back up to our corporate strategy team who is developing the products or developing the offerings, right? So that's another aspect of the job as well. Another part which I probably really love the most is actually talking to our customers, so education institutions, so universities, polytechnics, schools, and really understanding what are they trying to do around preparing their students and giving their students the best education that they can. And then how do we, I guess, align that with how Microsoft can support them and on that journey, right? So for me, I can talk about education more broadly from Microsoft's perspective, but when I'm talking with them, I'm really looking specifically at the sense of skilling and preparing them from a skilling perspective for the workplace and for, I guess, the future that is probably going to be very different to what they have, what they probably imagine today. So it sounds really vague, and it's really hard to describe my job besides telling you, I send emails, I'm on conference calls, I'm having meetings, and that stuff is typical. But yeah, a lot of it's to do with looking at the feedback, coaching the teams, providing the guidance, providing the clarity, and getting people really excited about it internally and getting our customers excited about it.
And what would you recommend to our young students, people, attenders to the summer school? Like, which future skills should they develop? Okay, I know that the most important one is to be able to adapt. I think that will be the best future skills ever. Like that we can recommend. That I should adapt. I don't know, in 10 years, technology will be everywhere. I will not read my books anymore like this. Maybe I will go in virtual reality. There's so many things that we can discuss. But what would you recommend to people who have 20, 22 years? Like, what they need to develop, really, to think about in all over the world? Yeah, that's really hard. I know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's a tough one, because I guess you're trying to apply a suggestion to the general population, which is a bit difficult to do, right?
I'm trying to see are future skills going to be the same for every part of the world, and are there going to be something universal, or it's going to be, part Europe will have different, America different one? Are they going to depend from cultural things, political, social, all of those circumstances that can affect us a lot? So how should we think philosophy? Yeah, this is a philosophical question.
It really depends how you look at future skills. I would say you kind of said it right, the adaptability piece and the learning to learn. And it sounds strange because you're like, is learning to learn a skill? But I really think of it more so as having that curiosity and being intentional about learning new things and constantly challenging yourself to do that. So regardless of whatever the future tech or the future soft skills or whatever it is, if you have that curiosity and that focus to continually challenge yourself to learn something, that's probably what is going to help you no matter what happens, right? And so I can't pinpoint to this is one area. I mean, if I really had to, I'd probably say you might want to upskill on artificial intelligence, because I think that's such an untapped space at the moment, and we don't have enough representation within that area. But yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know if I have a really strong answer for you besides just taking this opportunity, especially even now during this pandemic, to actually just start reading up about things. So I would go, okay, well, if I'm going to pick artificial intelligence, what can I read up on that is freely available content? What resources are available from some of these companies like Microsoft or AWS or Google that will let me actually experience and try these things in a practical way, to learn it, not just read about it, right? So you're actually learning by doing. So I mean, I don't know if I can suggest a skill, but I can suggest an approach, which is, yeah, I guess really being curious and being intentional about learning something. And when you're learning about something, how can you practically apply what you've learned to really reinforce that, and push yourself to do something that you probably don't think you could do.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the challenge for everybody. Like, I didn't think I could work in tech, and I was like, gosh, I can't, I remember my first year of university and I had to code a little robot to move from one square to another square. And I was like, this is just too hard. Like, coding isn't for me, and I'm never going to be good at it, and I'm never going to work in technology. So why does it matter? But, here I am today, and I'm forcing myself to learn about things that I never thought that I would. And I think that's the first step, right? Is just getting over that fear of change and fear of the unknown, and that, I guess, your own self-confidence that holds you back from doing these things. So I don't really answer your question in terms of specific skills, but I think it's more so what's the kind of approach and the mentality and mindset you kind of have to have towards learning that will prepare you no matter what happens.
Yeah, we are talking now about one life without borders. I think education also, when I was a student or when I was kind of going to the elementary school, was totally different than it's today. For example, we need to memorize everything what you mentioned, books, and to be here in our head. And now you have everything with the Google. The only thing you should know is how to divide the real information, true or false. To do it all that, it's totally different approach. And just 10 years happened between. So I can feel now gap, and I'm really interested to learn how to learn. I think that means to be open for new opportunities, to constantly try something new, that you cannot be stuck and wait for the perfect situation, occasion to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think I think you kind of, there's a sort of belief that it only really happens when you're in a classroom or you're in an education environment. But, I think particularly now with this pandemic, you're starting to realize there's so many things that you can do outside of the normal environment that you kind of classify these activities in, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it is becoming a little bit borderless in that regard. And yeah, we're really curious. I'm curious to sort of see how this will all develop, hopefully once this pandemic is over, and how that's going to really change people's perceptions around the sense of borderless activity.
It will for sure. I think that now people realize that we are all connected. We are the part of the same world. So like they are not different. And Corona were the same for everybody. I think that was maybe the best part of the disease, to be the same for every part of the world without exception. So I think that people will now learn maybe more about this empathy that we were talking about like last 30 years. Yeah, it will help for sure. And
yeah, definitely.
Tell me, like, what do you expect from summer school? Like, how do you see your role there, like as one expert?
What I'm really excited to do is hopefully, I'm really just excited to learn from everyone else as well, and share some of the things that I'm seeing around the world, and seeing from, a company perspective, but also my own personal point of view that I've seen being in schools and going to university, and that student component, but just learn from others around the world. And hopefully that will, I guess, influence my view on this topic as well, and develop me and my leadership in this area. So I'm hoping it's going to be a two-way thing where I can provide some input and share my views, but also gain a lot of perspectives from everyone else during this summer school.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will be usually for summer school. All experts and participants, they are telling that it's like that. It's coming in the two direction. You're getting something and then getting a lot, much more. So people are fully inspired after summer school, and we are really happy that you will join us in that. Hopefully, we will have opportunity to work about future, to talk more about future skills, maybe to analyze, to try to figure it out. What are they going to do? But maybe if I think twice, maybe your position now is position from the future. You're developing something, and in 10 years, like you will know like all steps in your position on your workplace. Or maybe if it's new position, maybe it's really meant to be for the future.
Yeah, we'll see.
You're really part of the future if you think that way.
Yeah, definitely.
There's
and
no comfort
I think
zone. Nobody did it before you, so you're the part of the future. You're somebody who really is involved.
Yeah, it's kind of it's such a crazy thing to sort of think about it, right? And I mean, okay, if we go back to the common narrative that exists, which is, you know, the jobs we know exist today won't be the jobs of tomorrow. And I would never have thought that this job would have existed.
Of course.
Even a year ago. And there's going to be so many more examples of this as we go. Like I couldn't have studied for this at university. And I couldn't even have studied for the job that I did prior to this at university, because you don't learn those things. Like, so it's quite fascinating when you kind of think of it from that view of, you know, did my education degree and my schooling prepare me for the job I'm doing now? And I would almost say no, but a lot of the extra activities I did outside of the classroom is kind of maybe what prepared me a lot more to be successful in the role that I'm in now, right?
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, and I have no clue what I'll probably be doing in even 5 years or 10 years.
Yes,
but ask me in a year where I am.
I think that now we have answer. We came to the answer what future skill and workplace sustainability will be. That is that you cannot be prepared for your job position. I think that will disappear. You know, like now, I think that the future will be, and that's what we need to prepare our participants, not to go to the university. Okay, yes, go to the university, but don't expect after this that you will have all knowledge that is needed and that you will be expert in some field. You will apply for some position, no matter which one, sales, marketing, and you will figure it out at the end after 2-3 months or 1 year what you're going to do. But in the meantime, those people will learn a lot and also will make big steps, and they will not even be aware of this. So I think that it's unpredictable totally, and that's something that's most exciting about online work, about our work.
But I think the funny thing as well is, I think if I think about, well, how can the education system start to align with preparing students, right, or the future of education? And in many ways, I think there's that level of on-the-job learning, and you kind of adapt and you figure out how to do these things as you go. But I think education can really almost fast-track you a little bit along the way, because, you know, if you're, one thing I've discovered in this role was quite a lot of education institutions haven't really started looking at cloud computing, even into the computer science degree as an example, right? And so what happens is a lot of these students come out with these computer science degrees, but don't understand, cloud computing and how to apply it and all of that stuff. And so companies are having to spend a lot of money retraining these students or upskilling these students to be able to actually do the job that they're wanting them to do. And so I think in many ways, an institution can start aligning their curriculum and the offerings that they have to what the industry is actually needing from a job perspective. And that just will allow for a smoother transition from education into the workplace. So I think there's a level of where I think education institutions can do better. But you're right that you can't always be 100% prepared, but what you can do is be ready for the unexpected.
Yes.
And with that aspect of being comfortable around learning and constantly learning no matter what it is, and having that open-mindedness to it, I think that's going to really prepare you for what's to come. But I do think there's a level of kickstart that could happen.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I traditionally I would say, well, if you've got those soft skills, you know how to collaborate, you know how to communicate, you'll get by and you'll learn on the job. But if I could go back and do a degree that kind of kick-started me into something, and I didn't have to spend as much time learning the hard skills when I started my role, I could really just focus on making an impact straight away. But then you spend a lot of time not only understanding the social nuances of a work environment as a young grad, you're also trying to learn the technical aspect of your job, if there is any. And it's sometimes hard to kind of do both those things, and it takes you a longer time to ramp up. But yeah, there's things you could probably do along the way that would prepare you to just be able to make an impact earlier on in your role.
Yes, and I also think that people will change their professions. They will be not so anymore. Yeah. I heard that doctors sometimes they're going to be bus drivers or something, just to rest a bit and to see new perception of the world. And everything is changing. People are switching. They are not anymore stuck in one place, one profession, in one house with one family. I think that people will become more travelers but in every single field of their life. So that is maybe the future is trying to tell to us, that it's not matter. When we pointed out, we have now strong gap between universities and companies. And companies are somebody that are the most important one in this world, in this particular moment, because like that's how we are learning new skills and we are getting our salary. So maybe in the future companies will have their own universities or something like this. Of course, summer schools trainings, but you know what I mean. Just to come to the, for example, Microsoft University and to learn particular part for, I don't know, for that workplace. And that's how it will not be anymore so big gap between universities and companies. Maybe.
I think it's a partnership, though.
Yes.
I mean, I know of some around the world where companies have, funded their own university, or, funded a specific school that teaches you, specific skills. But I would say generally what you kind of see is corporate organizations or philanthropic organizations, they're all trying to do their one bit and do their program, within a silo effectively, right? And, you see these companies, and I know Microsoft does it too, where you go, yep, I'm going to do a program where I train a bunch of girls on these skills, but I'm not going to do it in conjunction with the institution or the school, right? And then you see schools and universities doing the same thing in silo of, I guess, the public sector commercial world. So I think where you see the most scale and you see the most sustainable programs happen is when you have the industry come together with the education institution to really build something and align their efforts. I think that's where you see the most magic happen. Whereas a lot of these individual things that happen separately is constantly having to pump in more money or pump in more resource to keep things going. And I don't think you're ever really going to solve the problem unless we kind of all work together to try to do that. So yeah, it's just an observation I've noticed, I think, where everyone's kind of trying to do their bit, which is great. But how can we do something more if we work together?
Yes, I saw your articles on LinkedIn and Microsoft website. One article were about crying on the workplace, and I was super surprised. And I was talking with my colleagues, like, could you imagine? Like, could you imagine yourself crying here in front of me? And everybody said, no, that's shame. Like, and I was pretty much, I don't know, thankful after your article. Like, I was trying to figure it out. Like, how can you be so free to cry on the workplace. Like workplace
Mm.
maybe is becoming more familiar to everybody, so that we can actually express our emotions. Like, what's happening? Like, I would like to know more about emotions on the workplace. What are we doing with our emotions actually?
When we talk about emotions in the workplace and bringing, I guess your baggage, people have very polarizing opinions on it, right?
Yeah.
Around what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the workplace. So in some ways, you are starting to hear a lot of companies talk about, okay, well, you want to be your authentic self, and you want to really bring your full self to the workplace and not feel like you have to be somebody you're not, or hide who you are. And that can take all sorts of shapes and forms, right? It might be, okay, well, as a woman, maybe I need to seem more tough, or I need to seem more friendly, or whatever it is. And then on the other side, it could be, maybe I want to go to work one day and dye my hair pink, but I'm too scared to do it because I'm worried people will judge me. Yes. Or maybe, I'm from a religious background, or I'm from the LGBT community, and I'm too scared to be open about these things in the workplace. And it's a really tough topic sometimes to talk about. And I guess I wrote that article to really just share some of my own personal experience and really hopefully resonate with other people who've been in that situation. And I know that it's different by country and by cultural context and things like that. So, maybe in some countries it would just be a complete, no, and you'd lose your job for doing it, or whatever it is. But I almost think, especially as young people, we probably are in that position to really challenge the norm. And in some ways, if we continue to accept that certain behaviors or certain things are the way we should do things, and we don't challenge those norms, it's never going to change. And so I kind of hoped that by writing that article, I was hoping to, start a conversation about it, start changing the narrative around what it means to be yourself at work. And, I'm not saying like, great, every day you go cry and, you can sit in the floor of your office and cry your heart out, but more so that, if I do cry, that my colleagues are really understanding of that, right? They show empathy towards me, and they understand that, I'm being vulnerable, and that's okay. And I'm a human as well. And I think what that shows is that to other people, well, it's okay to not be perfect all the time. It's okay to not just always be put together. And I think you can really put this pressure on yourself to be all of those things. And sometimes you're just not, and it's just being okay being, I guess, human and being vulnerable. Yeah. So it's really interesting, because after I wrote that article, so I'll tell you the funny thing about that is, when I used to have it didn't happen a lot, but when I did cry, I found it really hard to control, and I'd always run to the bathroom, and there'd been a few times where I'd cried and in front of a manager, and I was so embarrassed, and I'd constantly be apologizing because I was like, oh God, this looks so bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And one day, one of my managers said to me, you don't have to apologize. Like, this is okay. This is normal. And so in some ways, they started to normalize that emotion in the workplace for me, that it's okay to not always be so stoic all the time. And I just kind of wanted other people to know that it was okay, and kind of, I was really scared, because in some ways, even, we talk about this, being seen as an expert or being seen as a leader. I don't really like being in the limelight. So it's almost contradictory to kind of some of the roles that I've been doing. But I really felt so strongly about this narrative that I felt like, cool, I have a platform that I can hopefully share my voice in. And if I don't do that, then no one will. And, a lot of people won't do it if they've never seen it been done before. So I was so reserved around putting that article that I think I wrote it in 15 minutes, and I was sitting on an airplane. Yeah, I was sitting on an airplane going to go visit my sister, and I'd just been reflecting on the week that had happened to me, and I just started writing it on my phone, like literally on the notes on my iPhone. And within 15 minutes, I'd just written this draft. It was almost therapeutic being able to express it, but I just felt compelled that I had to share that. because I was like, I can't be the only person who's been through this. Like, I'm sure everyone has this, and nobody talks about it. And because nobody talks about it, you think that, okay, you must be the only person, and that it's actually not okay to feel that way. But I kind of took a chance and I posted it, and I was so nervous. I was like, oh God, what are people going to react about this? And I was just a bit scared to put my public opinion out there, because I don't often do it. And the response was crazy. Like, I had people who I wasn't even connected with on LinkedIn, who I didn't even know, had somehow read my article and had messaged me personally to say, hey, like, this has happened to me and I'm really glad I read this. Like, I feel so much better knowing that it's not just me. And that's kind of what I want to achieve, right? Is just be there for someone else and be able to share that experience. And I think that was achieved. So yeah, it kind of just gave me that confidence to even share my opinion, even though I might not always get it right. And someone's probably going to watch this video and be like, I completely disagree with Anna. And that's okay too.
That's totally okay.
But yeah, I think for us as a generation, how do we find our voice and be vocal and passionate about the things that really mean a lot to us, even in the face of adversity, I think takes a lot of courage.
Yes, but we are, for example, 8 or 10 hours, or I don't know how many hours per day on our workplace with our colleagues, and they are becoming our family. Sometimes you just want to cry, sometimes you're nervous. Sometimes you are sad because you broke up with somebody, or you had a fight, or you feel bad, or you cannot imagine, or your mom told you that you're ugly. That's not happening, but you know what I mean. And I also felt that after reading this article, that I don't need to be perfect. To have that imagine of person who is never crying, or being brave. If I would cry once per year, that would not mean that I'm not brave, or that now I will have another name or another position. I'm just human being with my emotions. And sometimes after 8 hours every day, sometimes you just need to express it. You cannot you know how our, I don't know, my parents and other people were telling me, when you come to your job, just behind the door, leave your all emotions. Okay, but and then when you finish with your work, pick it up and go home. But it's too much pressure. If you ask
it takes so much energy, and I think it's kind of striking that balance as well, because I think when people can really bring themselves to the workplace, you get a lot of magic that happens that you wouldn't otherwise get. So it's kind of just striking the balance of, how can you still be yourself, but in a way that is, still authentic to you, but still professional for the workplace, right? And I think traditionally we've just been told that to be professional means one thing, but more and more you're realizing that there's people out there that are changing the views of what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a successful person. All of that stuff, I think, is the narrative is consistently being challenged, which I think is super exciting. And actually, it's funny because sometimes I even catch myself observing other people and think, what are you doing? Like, and then I'm like, no, Anna, actually, they're just being them, and that's okay, right? But it's such a difficult thing to change your kind of ingrained view of stuff, because we've been trained to sort of think that way. Like, you go to a CV workshop or you go to a job interview and you're told this is how you need to be when you do your interview and all of that stuff. And I don't know, I just hope that as the decades pass, that will change, and what it means to be at work and be at home, will blur in a good way to some extent. So yeah, let's see. But yeah, I think you're just going to do what works for you. And I mean, there's a really great book I would actually really suggest reading is, have you heard of Brene Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, so I love Brene. It's funny because I only found out about her after I wrote that article on LinkedIn. One of my colleagues was like, hey, Anna, you should read this book by Brene. Anyway, I ended up watching her YouTube videos and reading some of her blogs and stuff. But I just really resonated with what she had to talk about, which is really the power about vulnerability, and how that shows up in the workplace, and how do you be a successful leader when you can demonstrate vulnerability and courage and all of that. Her book called Dare to Lead. And then she kind of contextualizes this sense of vulnerability and courage, but in a work setting, and how that shows up in the workplace, and how people like you and me can start to put these things into practice, to, I guess, be our most authentic selves and to be as successful as possible in our roles. But yeah, I really love the messaging that she has, which is, showing up kind of as who you are and being human, in the sense that you're not always perfect and you're not always going to get it right, but you need to consistently learn, and challenge yourself and be yourself. So yeah, I definitely recommend reading that if you haven't already.
No, I will read it for sure, because your article triggered me to continue more, and also I expected more articles, Anna. I think that you should read more, that you should write more on LinkedIn. Yes, for sure. You will have public for that. I will be the first one, because
Thank you.
Yeah, and I cannot believe that it was only 15 minutes for the article, like about crying in the workplace. Sorry for not remembering the title. I read it 3 weeks ago, so I'm a bit bad with, I thought, okay, for this, it should take for me 2 days, to put everything in the place, to be perfect.
Yeah.
But for you, just went through from your soul, and it was really perfect. It helped me to feel better, to start thinking about my emotions on different way. I can be under stress, and I can say to my colleagues, okay, I'm under stress, so could you please just, I would like to be alone. And that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, or that And also I was reading another article about women in IT industry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
I wrote that one a while ago now.
Yes, it was. I think that it was one like career day in Microsoft or something like that. One day when you're coming in a company and trying to see how things are working in Microsoft or another company. You were there, and I remember that you asked them, those little girls. I think that they were 16.
Yeah, they were. I think like 12 to 15, really young.
Yeah, they were really young, and when you asked them about Microsoft, they mentioned cloud and I don't know, another thing. They were.
Oh yeah, they only mentioned, I think it was like Excel or Word.
Yes.
So really, really traditional things that Microsoft is known for, which is really funny.
Yes, as you said it, and you were talking about it now that they even didn't know that they can become the part of IT industry, because usually when we are talking about this, we're talking about programming and that's it, IT sector. But you're trying with your articles and your work, if I noticed well, to encourage them to keep going and to think about, IT industry seriously, to take a part of it, have their work there. So that's like really.
Yeah, I guess that article was interesting, because when I met all of these girls, I almost kind of assumed that their experiences must be, more eye-opening than the ones I had growing up, and which wasn't really even that long ago. But the fact that they were even there that day, that their school had organized this trip to go to Microsoft and learn about technology. I didn't have that when I was in school, and I don't know if you had that. But that in itself I thought was really cool. But when you talk to these girls, they were just there because their mum told them they had to go.
Yeah.
Or there was no other spots in any of the other class trips that they could go on, so they got stuck with going to Microsoft. And at that point I was like, wow, like why would they not want to work in tech? It's so cool. But you don't know what you don't know, right? And I was just like them. I didn't know anything about the tech sector or technology or anything until I was exposed to it. So even that first step for some of these girls, I think, is a great thing to be doing when you're young, exposing them to these different options that exist beyond school. So it was just, I just had the best day, and I just realized, like, I met one girl in particular, and she kind of came up to me at the end, and she sort of said, this was really cool. I didn't expect to really enjoy it, but I learned so much, and I'm really keen to see what else I can do in the tech industry and read up about it. And just even that in itself, I was like, wow, one girl who just discovered something new that she may be interested in just from coming to this, I thought was just awesome. So, but yeah, I mean, if we kind of go back to women in IT and why it's so important to have representation, I mean, yes, we can talk about equality and diversity and all of that, and that's important, but more than anything, I think women need a seat at the table, and they need to be influencing the decisions that are happening in this space, right? And the applications that are being built, the solutions, all of that stuff, the way things are designed. If we don't really have women who are sharing their voice and providing input into that design and that creation, we're not going to get solutions that are optimal for everybody on this planet. And yes, we all have iPhones, but some of the most successful applications are ones where women have been behind it and understood how women are going to use this in the real world. So I think these girls we really do need more representation, whether that's from a sales perspective, a marketing perspective, or being, the person who's engineering and coding this stuff. They need their voices heard because they're going to influence, how we design, create, and market to this audience. So yeah, I really do hope that things change over time and we see more representation. So yeah, let's see, one girl at a time.
Yeah, nice work, Anna. I'm really proud of you because it's engaged work. Like it's big effort that you're doing. You're not just doing your part of the job, you're inviting other girls, women, you encourage them to make step forward and to come to Microsoft, and then they can also take their place. They can also think about IT industry, not just became lawyer or housewife or something else. So I think it's really great impact that you're doing. Yeah.
I think we just need to know what options are available, right? And you kind of grow up with these traditional views of how things are. And I think it's very different now. Like if I look at my younger sister, she's obviously more aware of the options that she has available from an education perspective and from a career point of view. But yeah, I guess when I was growing up, there was only really like a few subset of roles that were kind of acceptable. And I'm kind of the first in my family, I guess, to kind of challenge that. And now my little sister kind of sees, okay, well, Anna's kind of done something different to what was kind of expected. And so I think that kind of opens the horizon to even my younger siblings to feel comfortable to pursue something they're passionate about or do something that's unexpected, which I think is awesome. So
yeah, thank you, Anna. Do you have maybe something to say to our participants for the summer school, to young people?
Gosh, I guess I'm just really excited for the ad. Oh gosh, pressure. I'm so not good at this. Well, yes. Obviously I'm really excited to meet everyone. I'm really excited to learn from everyone else. And, I'm going to be an expert, but I'm also going to be a student, and hopefully learning from the views of other people who are within our generation, and hopefully learn from them and shape my own views, and maybe take that back to the activities and the programs that I'm running to make them even better as well. But yeah, I'm really excited to just learn and just, enjoy and have fun as well. So let's see.
Anna, thank you very much for your patience and for your time. I really appreciate it.